Welcome to NinjaCast, a photography podcast powered by Studio Ninja, the world's highest rated business management app, built specifically for photographers. Listen and learn as the most successful photographers on the planet share their knowledge to help you transform every element of your photography business. Here's your host, Sally Shaw.
Hi guys, welcome to NinjaCast. Today I'm joined by the lovely Vicki Knights. Vicki is a photographer, but alongside that she also runs the hugely successful podcast Shoot, Edit, Chat, Repeat. I'm really excited to have her on the show today so that she can share all of her knowledge and tips with you all. We're going to be covering everything from branding, making sure that your brand makes you stand out from the crowd, pricing to make sure that you're in the right place in the market, and also mindset and how important it is that you look after yourself and your mindset as a photographer. Let's get started. Hi Vicki, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks. How are you, Sally?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you. We finally got there.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. It's been a bit of a whirlwind of a year, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. So I think we first had this in January and I was like, look, I'm homeschooling my kids, probably not the best time. So at least we got it back in.
Absolutely. So how's life been? What's kind of been the last year for you? Talk us through.
Well, good, really. I mean, not good, good in terms of compared to a lot of people have had so much to deal with. I'm really lucky that, my boys stayed quite happy. That's the most important thing, right? If your family's happy, then you're happy.
100%.
So everything was good there. It actually gave me the opportunity to work on some stuff in my business that I've been meaning to do for years. So I took a lot of my courses and things like that online, which I never have time for because I'm normally shooting, editing, and just keep going. So actually I've come out of it with lots of stuff now that's just done, which is great. But I am loving being back to shooting again. So I had a branding shoot yesterday. I was like, I don't care if I'm wearing a mask the whole time. This is so nice to actually be with other humans. So
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I've got my first wedding in 2 weeks.
Have you?
And although I shot two last year, but it was like one was in January just before everything started happening in the UK, and the other was in October. So there was such a big stretch in between the two. And then I've had nothing since that. Everybody's been postponing and moving, and but I don't know about you, but things seem to have just blown up recently in terms of inquiries, and all of a sudden the industry's just kind of restarting again, isn't it? Which is lovely.
Of inquiries for this year as well.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, which I totally didn't see coming at all. I thought that we'd, as an industry, maybe we'd just kind of we'd run out what we still had for this year, the people that just wanted to get married no matter what. And then we would kind of kickstart again next year, and next year will be manic. Actually, it seems, and I think, from what I'm seeing on social media and things, other fellow photographers in the industry are having that same kickstart as well, which, that's amazing. It's the best thing we could have asked for, really.
Yeah. And I think the last year, it's changed people in so many ways, but I think actually it's made people realize the value of family and connection and friends, and actually investing in a photographer is probably much more important than investing in other things that you might do in your wedding. And I think for family photographers, and I've had so many branding inquiries because I think there's so many new businesses as well. So
absolutely.
I think so many people were questioning what would happen to the photography industry. And I think if anything now, it's just going to get bigger and people are just going to value it so much more, which is a good thing.
Definitely. It's one of those things, isn't it? When we were all in it together as photographers, we were kind of saying, we're a luxury at the end of the day, although to us, what we provide, we see the value and we know it's worth. A lot of people can go, well, we don't need, it's not an essential. Do you know what I mean? So there was always that worry, I think, for the industry where we were going to go, how is this going to pan out? What's our job going to look like moving forward? Is it going to be as busy as it once was? But I'm just over the moon that it's starting to show its fire again, and we're coming back with a vengeance.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's different for everyone. Although everyone was saying, people aren't going to have the money for it, but a lot of my clients have saved money because they haven't been going on holiday, or they haven't been commuting into London, and so they actually, their jobs are just transferable to home, so they have more money than they did. So actually, and that combined with the fact that people seem to be valuing photography more is really positive, I think.
Definitely. So Vicky, we've gone off on a right little catch up, and I haven't even asked you to introduce yourself to our listeners. So can you tell us who you are, a little bit about you and your journey so far in the industry?
Yeah, of course. I'll give you the short version. So I started with a career in kind of advertising and sales. That's my background. And then my story is very typical of a lot of women. So I had my first baby 13 years ago. Really wanted my own business. Didn't necessarily know what it was going to be. And I'm not one of these people that's like, I want to be a photographer. I loved photography and I loved photographing people. So I used to always go on, I used to go traveling and come back with loads of photos of kids especially. So I always loved it. Didn't think I could make a business out of it. So during my maternity leave it was my husband actually that said, why don't you do photography? And I just didn't want to have a studio. I didn't want to work like that. And he was like, no, how will you photograph our baby? Why don't you do it like that? Lifestyle photography wasn't really a thing. This is back in 2008. I couldn't find really anyone on Google, but it was quite big in America. So I got some mentors out there and took advice and never went back to work, just set up my business. Started just in family photography, and I know it's much harder nowadays, but immediately as soon as my website went live I was getting bookings, which is incredible.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was without a doubt the right decision that I made. And then a few years after that I started doing branding and headshot photography. It wasn't called branding photography at the time, that's quite a new thing, but I was doing female entrepreneurs. And then I ran photography workshops for parents for about 8 years. And then in the last kind of 6 years, I've been training photographers. I run retreats. I've got our podcast, Shoot, Edit, Chat, Repeat. And I mentor a lot of photographers. So my business has kind of evolved over the years. But my main thing is still family and branding photography.
Absolutely. And how do you balance all that? Like, that sounds like a hectic work lifestyle on its own, let alone, still having a family and children and still having a bit of downtime for you. How do you find kind of having all those plates spinning?
Well, I get bored quite easily, so I love having lots of plates spinning. And I know lots of experts will say niche down, but I kind of love it all. And sometimes I think, should I just go down this route? And I'm like, I can't leave that behind because I just love it. And actually, I think if the last year has taught us anything, it's no bad thing to have quite a diverse business where you've got lots of different things you can rely on.
Absolutely.
So whenever I sort of think I'm going to niche down, I think, no, I do love it. And it all fits really well together. I think in terms of managing it all, I know when to say no. So I went through a stage where I didn't, and I was working all hours when my boys were very young. I wasn't asking for any help, and I was just trying to do everything. I'm still learning. Like I'm just this week looking to outsource my editing. It's taken me 12 years. But I know we're on the Studio Ninja podcast, but getting Studio Ninja about 3 years ago changed everything for me as well. So finally finding things that will help me in my business. I tried to do it all, but I know how many shoots I can do a month and I stick to that. I used to just go, okay, I'll squeeze you in. I do occasionally, but I just now I'm booked up till October and I know inquiries coming in. I'm just like, I'm really sorry. And a lot of them will wait. And if they won't wait, I refer them to other photographers. So that sits okay with me now. Whereas I used to just think I can't turn business away. So
it's hard as a business person, isn't it? You see this inquiry, and not only do you see the potential for a relationship with a new client and to build that bond with somebody and to provide them with memories, but also at the end of the day it's our income as well, isn't it? And you see that extra income that you have to go, no, I don't want that. And that's really difficult, isn't it?
It's really difficult. And I think first few years of my business, my friends would always go, but you're so busy. And I'd go, yeah, but I don't know if it's going to carry on in 6 months' time. I might have nothing, and you just didn't know if it was going to continue. But I think with time and experience, I know this will continue. I hope it will continue. So I'm confident enough to be able to go, I can't do the best work for you right now because I'm going to be too busy. And I know if I try and slot that in, I'm just going to be overwhelmed. So I think actually I'd much rather refer that on. So I'm just more comfortable in that. And it means as well that I can take on the clients that are right for me. And if something doesn't feel right, then I'm quite happy to say, no, I can't take that at the moment.
Amazing. I feel like we need to delve into your journey and looking into outsourcing a little bit more. It's completely not planned for our conversation today, so I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. But how have you found that? Is it because for a lot of photographers, our images, our work is our baby, isn't it? It's hard giving that away.
It's really hard, and it's one of the things in my business that I've definitely struggled with. I'm not great at delegating. I kind of think, the client experience is so important to me that, you know, it sounds really arrogant, doesn't it? But I just think I'm the only one that can offer that. And I know that's not the case. You know, down deep, I think someone else can do this just as well, if not better than me.
Yeah.
But I think they've booked me, and therefore I need to be responding to their emails. I need to be doing the editing because it's my vision that they're booking. So that's been a really difficult process. I have just started to do it. I've just started, you know, in the past year or two, I've been outsourcing some copywriting, just that kind of thing. Editing literally this week. So I've just sent off my first shoot, so I can't say how it's going to go.
Exciting. And who have you gone with?
So I've gone with the Photographer's Edit at the moment, but I've also inquired with Freedom Edit because I heard the podcast on here.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so I literally emailed them going, I've just heard your podcast with Ryan and Sally, so I'm having an onboarding call with them as well. So
fantastic. It's a really good idea, you know, to test out the water with different companies as well. You know, although, you know, we're really good friends with Ryan over at Freedom and they're phenomenal, there are also obviously other options out there for photographers, and you know, it's not a one size fits all, is it? So it's great to be able to kind of send those sample test shoots off to different companies and see what they come back with for you. It gives you, I think, that bit of more security when you do make that decision, because it's such a big one for photographers.
It really is. And do you know what, if it works, because I've always just thought, I don't know, because when I, you know, because I've sent it off for culling as well, it's the culling that takes me the time. The actual editing, you know, I'm not a big retoucher. I don't take things into Photoshop. So the actual editing doesn't take me that long, but it's the culling. So I thought, and that's what's always put me off doing it, because I'm like, I need to cull it. I was there. I want to tell the story of the shoot. So we'll see. It might not work, but I think with business, it's always good to try and investigate these things. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does work, it's going to be amazing, because the thing about my business that I love the shooting, but I also really love running my business. I love the marketing. I love running my podcast. I love mentoring photographers. And I don't have, now I'm back to shooting again, so much of my time is taken up sat at my desk editing. And it will be amazing if it works. So I'll keep you posted.
Absolutely. I was in the same situation as you, 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. I'd taken on far too much. I was a total yes person. I took on every wedding that came into my inbox that wanted to book. And I got myself into the space where I was getting up at 5 a.m. to edit, and I wasn't finishing until gone midnight. And that was most days. And I didn't see anyone. I was just in the office constantly. And I did the same as you. I sent off various kind of sample catalogs to different companies. I ended up going with Freedom, and they still edit my stuff now. And it is a breath of fresh air when I can now shoot a wedding. I still cull it myself because I'm super quick at that. I can probably get through, I use Photo Mechanic, so I can probably get through a wedding and have it fully culled down to a reasonable number in about 45-50 minutes. So I actually quite enjoy that bit. I'm really brutal.
Yeah, you're probably a lot more decisive than I am.
I'm really, really brutal. So I do that, and then I literally bang it all into a catalogue, send it to Freedom, and then a week or so later it's back and it's exactly as I would have delivered it. And I was so the type of person that said, nobody can do that as well as I can do it. I know my style so well that they couldn't possibly replicate it like I would do it. And you know, hats off to them. They do
your style, don't they? Which I think I didn't realize that. I think I thought, well, it needs to be in my style. But of course, they just completely take your style, which is so,
absolutely.
That will work.
It'll be a breath of fresh air for you, honestly.
It'll be amazing.
It'll be a real.
It means I can take on more shoots, so maybe I don't need to turn away so many shoots, because normally I look and think, right, I need that day for editing. If that's all gone, amazing.
Absolutely, definitely. So obviously, family photography branding is your thing. So there's a lot of photographers perhaps listening to this that haven't delved into that side of things. Branding photography, I would say, more so, that people just don't think about doing that side of it. It's still quite a niche market that people feel they don't know enough about to kind of venture into. So what are your top tips for photographers that are looking to start, you know, to venture into family photography and branding photography?
Well, I think the first thing is you've got to invest in training. I mean, you can't just go, oh, I'm gonna be a family photographer. That's the first thing you've got to do. So ask around, look at other photographers in that genre that you really like and you like their work. But also, it's not just about their work, it's about them and how they market themselves, the feel you get from them, and just find the right trainer for you and the right course and invest in that before you get started. So yeah, that's always the first step, I would say.
Absolutely. And then in terms of the actual, the training's going to teach them an awful lot about the business of, family photography or the business of branding photography. What are your tips for people? Is it different to being a wedding photographer? Do you deal with your clients differently? Is their journey any different?
Well, I would say in terms of family and branding photography, there is a difference. I shot 3 weddings when I first started, but I've never been a wedding photographer as such. So, but I would say wedding photography and branding photography is more similar in that you've got to hold your client's hand a little bit more. So there's a lot of preparation that happens with a branding shoot. You've got to really understand just like you need to understand a bride and their wedding day and their vision for their wedding. It's exactly the same with a branding shoot. You've really got to understand them and their brand and talk about location and the feel for their photos and everything. With families, it's much more, I feel they're choosing me for my style. So it's more about me finding out about their children. But, that's just about me photographing their family and capturing that connection. So yeah, branding photography, there tends to be a bit more preparation, a bit more hand holding beforehand as well.
Yeah, I can definitely see that would be the case. I think, families, it's much more about just capturing that connection, isn't it? Whereas branding, there's a real plan and process. And really the shoot is the end bit rather than the first bit.
I always say I did a branding shoot yesterday and she was like, oh my God, I've done it. Spent so much time. Actually, me and Eddie had a shoot for our podcast. I left the house with like 5 outfits, bags of stuff. I was like, this is so much harder than me turning up to a shoot to shoot it.
Yeah, so you saw the other side.
Yeah, I always say to my clients, like, you've done all your work now. When we finish the shoot, they can just relax. That's when my work then starts.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of prep that they have to do. Whereas a family shoot, you've got to get out of the house looking quite coordinated, have the kids' faces clean, but it's not, it's not so much prep as you need to do for a branding shoot when you need props and everything else. So,
yeah, for sure. So you've already mentioned that marketing is a bit of a love of yours. So how do you market your branding and family photography? Obviously, they're very different genres in themselves. Yeah. So how do you market them separately, but still kind of all as the same company, really? It's still all you, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's always the big question. People are always like, do I need 2 separate websites? And my advice is always, as long as you've got the same client, the same target client across both. Now, obviously, if you're like a newborn photographer and then like a saucy boudoir photographer, that's not going to sit so well together. But my business soulmate, as it were, is the same across both. And I have a lot of crossover where I'll get branding clients that will then come back to me the following year with their family and vice versa. So there's a lot of crossover and I make sure I'm talking to the same person across my work. My style is very similar across both. And I just think like if someone's about to book a shoot for their family, they're not going to be put off by seeing this really cool, inspiring entrepreneur on my website too. They're going to be like, wow, she looks amazing. So yeah, it works really well together. From a marketing perspective, I think it's really similar. To me, the most important thing about marketing is all about your client experience, is making sure that all of your clients are not just happy, they've got to be delighted. And my business has always grown through that. So for every client, they go and tell more clients and it just grows and grows from there. So so I have a lot of repeat clients, which obviously you get when you've been in business as long as I have. So a lot of clients come back to me year after year. But also, word of mouth is huge for me. Absolutely. But another thing, obviously there's so many marketing things, isn't there? But the other thing that is really key, which I think a lot of photographers miss or are scared of or just don't see the value in it, is a mailing list. And we've all heard of it, haven't we? And some people go, I've set it up, I've never actually sent an email, I've never done anything with it. But the reason, if you look at my social media, you don't often see, in fact, you never really see me promoting mini sessions or I've got a slot next week, or I just don't really promote. I don't have to on social media. I never pay for advertising. I can fill my sessions just through my email. So if I'm doing mini session morning, I just send an email and it's booked within 24 hours, which is such a nice position. I know it's not, that takes time to build. You can't do that tomorrow. But if I was starting a business now, the first thing I would do is start building my mailing list, because that's going to stick with you. And yeah, social media, Instagram could close down your page tomorrow, and it's happened to photographers. I'm sure you know a few people. It just goes. It's quite scary. Your mailing list, no one can take that away from you. That is yours. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox now, but everyone needs a mailing list.
No, I love that. That's fun. I've not even thought of that before either. I mean, I guess it's maybe a little bit different for wedding photographers, and perhaps mailing lists for kind of your extras, your print sales, your album sales afterwards, that kind of thing. But I certainly don't have a mailing list, so that's a top tip that I'm taking away from today.
Good. It is slightly different for wedding, because you hope they're only going to get married once, don't you?
Absolutely.
I think definitely if you do two genres of, so if you do weddings and families or wedding and branding, then absolutely, but still getting those potential brides on your list, and then having a nurture sequence that goes out. So when they're looking at all the wedding photographers, they're thinking, oh, I've been getting all these really useful emails from Sally, I'm going to book her. So still definitely worth doing. But I don't spam people, because I know I have different parts of my business. So I have about 5 different email lists for different parts, like photographers, branding, mini sessions, so that I'm only emailing them with stuff that's really relevant to them. And I'll still promote other parts of my business. So I'll put a little PS, did you know I've got family mini sessions coming up too? But I won't spam them with just emails about that. So it's really dedicated just to them, what they want.
I love that. That's fantastic. I think a mailing list for the types, like you say, of branding photography, family photography, portraits, all that kind of thing, it's priceless, really, isn't it? It's literally a hub of all of your customers in one space, in one click of a button. I guess, you can send that out to all of them. And, I can imagine that builds really, really quickly, actually, in terms of momentum of the amount of customers that you can get on there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's lots of things to it. We could do a whole episode just on that, but obviously you need a lead magnet or something to pull them in first, because then if you just say, join my newsletter, no one wants that. But also I do not, for people that are listening that may be on my list, I don't send emails every week, or probably even every month. I'll try and send useful things when I think about them, but it's more that I can then target them when I do have something that I want to promote as well.
Yeah.
And if I put that just on Facebook, that's hardly going to reach anyone. I've got like 2,000 followers on there, but let's face it, with the algorithm, you'll be lucky if you reach a few hundred people.
Yeah.
Whereas by getting in their inbox, I know that they're seeing it. They may not click on it, but they're going to see it, which is more than that's going to happen on Instagram or Facebook. You're going to reach all of those people, and then they can choose whether they open it or not. So it's definitely still the best form of marketing.
I believe I will be setting up a mailing list.
Yay!
So we're talking about marketing. I think we've missed out a little step that I want to jump back to. So it's great that we can talk about how to get ourselves out there. But before we can do that, there's a lot of photographers that will need to work out where they sit in the market and their pricing and where they want to be and what's competitive and what's the right space for them. So pricing, I know you love to speak about, and you love to kind of divulge in there. So what's your advice for people that are looking to position themselves in the right place price-wise?
Yeah. Okay. So pricing. Whoa, that's a big topic as well. We're doing all the big topics. I'm trying to condense them into teeny few minutes. On our podcast, we've had loads of episodes just about pricing. So I think it comes down to 2 things, if I'm going to try and make it really simple, which is mindset and maths. We all love maths, don't we, as photographers? So firstly, maths, right? You've got to do your sums. So many photographers, when they come to me for mentoring, I'm like, what did you base your pricing on? They're like, well, I looked at a few in my area, and so-and-so was this, so-and-so. So I've sort of slotted myself right in the middle, or worse, they're like, I've just gone cheaper because I'm less experienced. I'm like, no. The worst thing you can do is base your pricing on a competitor, because you have no idea if they're making a profit, if they're about to go out of business, if it's just a hobby, you have no idea. So you shouldn't really even look at their pricing just to get a gauge, but then ignore it. So you've got to do your cost of doing business, which isn't it's not the sexiest thing for a photographer to do, I know, but you've got to sit down and do it. So write everything down, and also work out how much you want to earn a month and how many hours you can work a month. And then there's so many spreadsheets online. If you just Google cost, CODB for photographers, and then it will give you a magic figure of how much you need to be earning per shoot, which is quite scary. And whenever I get photographers to do this, they're like, I've been charging X, and it's telling me I need to charge triple. I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm like, well, you do, otherwise you haven't got a sustainable business. You know, that's why people end up going out of business in a few years, because they suddenly do their tax return and go, I would have been better working in a supermarket. Like, what was the point of all that work?
Yeah.
So you've got to do that to figure out exactly how much you should be charging. Then I think the next step is, if that makes you feel comfortable and you feel okay about it, fantastic. Work out how you're going to get to that figure and go with it. For most people, it's going to make them feel a little bit uncomfortable, and they're going to go, I just don't think I can charge that. And friends of mine have said it's too expensive and I wouldn't pay that, la la la, and all these excuses we tell ourselves, right? That means you've got a money mindset issue. And so sometimes I say to people, there's no point us going through all your pricing and trying to work out packages, because you need to figure stuff out here. Because if you don't believe it in your heart, if you can't comfortably say to someone, my prices are X, and feel comfortable in that, you've got to do some work. So you could do a whole 6-week course on this, so I can't cover it just in this chat, but I would recommend, there's a couple of books. Can I say just a couple of books?
Absolutely, please do. Yeah.
So one has a swear word in it, and I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here.
Oh,
is that right? It's called Get Rich Lucky Bitch by Denise Duffield Thomas. I don't know if you've heard of it. That's really good for sort of dealing with money blocks and everything else. And then there's another one which I think is out fairly recently. I've read it on Blinkist, but I've got the book I need to read, so I've just read the recap version of it, which is called this has got a slight swear word in it. You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. Name right, which is really good. Again, goes back to all the money blocks that we have, which can stem from like childhood and so many different things. So I would read one of those books first and then get stuck into doing your pricing. If you feel, we all have those money blocks, right? We all, when we go to put our pricing up, I don't think anyone's like, yes, everyone's like, oh, will I get booked again? You know, so I think anyone, you know, I feel like I'm okay with money, but I still read these books just to help myself and to help photographers that I work with as well.
Definitely. I mean, you've touched on it briefly there. Mindset is a massive one, isn't it? Not just on the pricing side of things, but as photographers, you know, in our industry, mindset is massive. So can you delve a little bit more into that for us? I know that, you know, mindset is such, again, a massive topic to cover. But how can photographers, you know, be aware of their mindset? How can they improve it when it comes to business and personal life?
I honestly think mindset is everything. I mean, it is everything. I would say, and this is a stab in the dark, I would say that running a thriving photography business is like 95% mindset and 5% talent. And I know some people probably be like, what? I'm very talented. But it is, because if you have the right mindset, you can learn anything. If you have the right mindset, you can improve at anything. If you have the right mindset, you can outsource anything, right? So as we were just talking about. So with that right mindset, you can do anything. And it's such a small amount that's actually down to talent. I think not a lot of photographers, that's a bit unfair. Some photographers have what is known as a fixed mindset. Don't know if you've heard the terms like fixed and growth mindset. And a fixed mindset is the sort of stuff sometimes you see in Facebook groups where they'll be like, no one will pay those prices in my area, or everyone's better than me, I'm never going to be as good as them. Things like, I just had 3 inquiries, they all ghosted me, what am I going to do? So that's like a fixed mindset where it's just like, nothing's going to get better. And it's about switching that up so that you make it into a growth mindset. So say, for example, just taking that last one. So someone comes to me and they're like, I've had 3 inquiries, they all ghosted me. What am I doing wrong? I'm like, well, let's look at this first. That's amazing that you've had 3 inquiries this week. Your marketing, you're rocking it. That is fantastic. What's brilliant now is all we need to work on is the conversion. So we can learn that, right? So that's a growth mindset, just going, I'm not so, you know, also another thing photographers say is I'm crap at marketing. I can't market myself. I'm rubbish at business. I'm like, well, if you keep saying that, you're not going to get better. What you need to say is, do you know what? I'm brilliant at photography and I'm a really creative person, which means I'm sure I can learn marketing, right? You know, there's so much information out there. And if people just switch that in their heads and make everything about growth and learning, then you can learn anything. And it does, when I see photographers that have succeeded, they're always the ones with that growth and that positive, optimistic mindset. And I know it's not easy. Like, we all have down days and times when you've got that inner voice going, you can't do it, you can't do it. We all have that. And I have to work on it constantly. I'm naturally quite a positive person, but I really work at it. And you have to work at it. I would say to a lot of photographers, like, when they're sort of talking about all the technical parts of, how am I going to get this right? And should I be doing back button focus? I'm like, actually, if I was going to give you some advice, I would pick up a personal development book rather than a book just about the technicalities of photography, because that's going to get you so much further.
It's so easy, isn't it, to sit there and let your head just tell you negative things all of the time. Like, I'm quite similar, so I'll catch myself sometimes going, oh, you can't do that, or what was that edit, that was crap, like, what have you how have you left it like that, go back and do it again. And then you hear yourself doing it, and I make a conscious point now of writing it, kind of rewriting it in my head, if that makes sense. Great. And instead of saying something negative, you have to flip it and turn it into a positive. And even just something as simple as that, and being self-aware of the fact that you said something negative to yourself, although it's one of those age-old things, isn't it? You wouldn't say that to somebody else, so why are you saying it to yourself?
You wouldn't even talk to your worst. The stuff we say to ourselves, you would not say to your worst enemy. We are so mean to ourselves. I remember I listened to this podcast episode on how to fail. I don't know if you've heard How to Fail with Elizabeth Day. I love it. And Mo Gawdat was on it. He was talking all about this. He's fascinating. He's got his own podcast now, but he was saying I can't remember what he's got, his internal negative person. He gives her a name. I think she's called Betty or something like that. So when he said he's literally, I mean, you'd look mad if you did this, but he's literally walked down a road and, negative Betty is going, well, you can't do that. Don't be ridiculous. They don't even like you. And he'll stop and go, what did you just say to me? He'll like literally talk to her. And a lot of what he's saying is a lot of it, exactly like you just said, Sally, is actually pulling it out. So when you say, well, I can't post that picture on Instagram, everyone's going to hate it. Go, hang on 1 second. Even write it down. And when you write it down, and I always say to people that there's 2 questions you need to ask when you have one of these thoughts. Firstly, is it true, right? So write it down, look at it. So you might think, no one is going to like this photo. Everyone's going to think it's crap. So firstly, is it true? Of course it's not true, right? You're not going to have no one like it. You can't have everyone like it. You wouldn't want everyone to. And then the second question is, does it matter? So does it matter if no one likes it? No, you like it, your client likes it. So what? It really doesn't matter. And it makes you just sort of laugh at that thought that's just come up and just go, actually, that's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. Or exactly like you're saying, switching it and thinking, if a friend was saying that to you, like, I can't post this, or, I'm not confident enough to be a wedding photographer, you'd be like, of course you are. Like, you'd be brilliant. Just talk to yourself like that. And it's constant. And I think a lot of it is what we consume. So if you spend your time watching the news, in negative Facebook groups, just reading and consuming loads of negative stuff, of course, that's how you're going to start feeling. I have to pull myself away from things like that, because it just gets you down. So try and consume more positive stuff. When you wake up in the morning, read something positive, pick your book up, pick something up, just do something positive that's going to get your brain in the right frame of mind.
They do those daily books of like affirmations, don't they? Where you just you open a page and it's a page for 365 days of the year, and you have a positive affirmation that you repeat that day. And things as simple as that can be like a game changer, can't they?
Totally. And I'm not going to get really woo on you or anything, but like I mean, I've only sort of got into this in the last few years, like the whole law of attraction thing. I always thought it was a bit out there and a bit woo like years ago. But when I got into it and read about it, I was like, do you know what this is? It makes total sense now why, I don't want to sound out, but why my business has been a success. And I suddenly thought, right, because say, for example, when I put out when I announce a morning of mini sessions, I never think, oh my God, what if these don't sell? I literally in my notebook will write down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm just filling in the names. So I've already gone, these are going to fill. It's just a case of who they're with. And when you read all these law of attraction books, they tell you to do that. They're like, write down, right, these are the 5. And it's just a case of then filling it. So whenever I launch something, I go, right, what number of people do I want to book this? And you sort of just think about it. And it's quite magical how, I just think thoughts become things. So everything you're thinking tends to become reality. So if all you're thinking is, I can't do this, no one's going to book me, no one's going to like my work, then guess what? It kind of becomes true. Whereas if you can switch it and think really positively, then generally that's what happens. So like every month I put in my shoots, even if they're not booked up for the rest of the year, I've got shoots in my diary, and then it's just a case of slotting them in, but I know they're going to happen,
Yeah, definitely. It is one of those things, isn't it, that I was exactly the same, 5 years ago, maybe even a little bit less than that. I'd just be like, mindset, like, why do I need to bother? Like, I'm fine. And now you get it's much more of a trending topic now, isn't it? It's more spoken about. It's cool to be working on your mindset kind of thing, isn't it? So it's more out there, and it's in front of people a little bit more, I think. And I think until you actually go, I'll give it a go, like, what's the worst thing that can happen, you don't actually feel the kind of the positivity that comes from it, do you? And even things as simple as how you're feeling about yourself that day, or how you're feeling about your business that day, can just change drastically in just turning something negative into positive.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I'm glad you agree with it too, because there are some people, I think whenever we release podcast episodes about it, we get so much feedback. People kind of just lap it up, but there's also obviously going to be a cynical, people going, that's a load of rubbish. But
that's me 5 years ago. That's where they're at.
Yeah, exactly. But it really does work. And I've, in the last sort of 5 years, I've been through some difficult patterns. I lost my dad nearly 4 years ago. And that's the first time in my life that I was like, oh my God, I didn't want to work. I was just like, my motivation. So I had to really work on it. And that's when I started getting into all this, because I was like, actually, this is the first time that I've really got to work on my mindset. I've always been really lucky. I've not suffered with my mental health, right? That's really fortunate. And suddenly grief just overwhelmed me. So that's when I started looking into all this, and went, I've got to have something. I've got to do something to make sure that and it's funny, as soon as I wasn't putting all this positivity into my business, suddenly it wasn't giving me everything back. Like inquiries died down a bit and stuff, because I wasn't putting it out there. So I did all this work, and now I'm like, I can see now how powerful it is. And so for people that are suffering with their mental health, or just with their mindset, having a negative mindset, just doing that work just helps so much. It really does.
I always compare it to like an energy drink. So if you've worked on your mindset and you're feeling positive and you've kind of filled your cup, if you like, then everything else kind of falls into place and everything goes really well, because you're in a positive place. So you're smashing out your marketing, you're replying to inquiries really quickly, you're sending everything out for a booking that you need to, and it's all done and dusted, and then you on your social media, and then you're networking, and all of a sudden you're just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour because you're in a good place. If you're the opposite and you're feeling low and you're not feeling like you're wanting to do any of those things, then of course business is going to suffer, because all those 1,000,000 miles an hour things aren't happening, because you've not had that energy drink, you've not got the energy to do it.
So true. And they're the people that generally are spending, they're like, I don't have the time. Like, okay, talk me through what you've been doing this week. And they've spent 10 hours in Facebook forums, just kind of reading people's moaning and that. And I'm like, just cut that out immediately. And you go in these groups and you can find yourself down a rabbit hole, can't you? They'll suddenly be talking about some new technique or something, and then you're suddenly off, and you're like, oh my God, I've still got all that editing, I've still got that marketing I need to do. And so you've kind of got to dip into it sometimes, but set yourself time limits on stuff like that.
100%.
Because it can just eat away at your time completely.
Definitely. So I'm really intrigued, Vicki. You've got a lot of direction in your business, and it seems your personal life as well. You seem a really positive person. So is there an inspiration as to where that's come from? Are there people out there in the world that you really look up to and that inspire you on a daily basis?
Do you know what? I was thinking about this, and I thought there isn't just I don't tend to look at many photographers. I have to now for our podcast, because we're looking for photographers but I don't tend to look at other photographers for inspiration, because I think then the dreaded comparison can kick in, and I'm happy with my work and where it is. And it's like, you don't want to kind of go down different tangents. I follow loads of business people. So I love marketing podcasts and the likes of Amy Porterfield, Marie Forleo and Jasmine Starr and all of those kind of people. So I obviously find all of those inspiring, but my main inspiration just comes from people that I meet. Like, I feel inspired chatting to you, Sally. So you've inspired me, you know, like this morning, woke up, I was a bit knackered and then coming on here with you, I feel inspired. So it's just, you know, my clients, the people that come on the podcast, my family, my friends, just everyone, anyone that's doing something that makes them feel passionate and they're making a good difference to the world and they're positive, just makes me feel inspired, really.
I love that. That's perfect. And if you could start your career all over again, is there anything you'd do differently? Is there anything you'd turn back the time on?
I always think it's not great to kind of look back with regret, and I'm really happy. And, you know, if I always try and think to myself, if I'd have looked at my business now 10 years ago and where it is now, I'd be like, what? That's amazing. I'd be so delighted. I would say, I mean, going back to right at the beginning of our conversation, I would probably outsource a lot earlier. So I would just ask for help and not try and hold on to everything, and just think about, outsourcing a lot more and trying to build more of a team around me. That's what I would do.
Amazing. And if you have one final piece of advice, it can be something related to business or personal life, what would that one piece of advice be?
It's got to be mindset, you know, because I just said about it's 95%, it's got to be your mindset. If there's one sort of thing, if people are listening thinking, where do I start? Like, what do I do? The book, I already referenced her other book, but the book, it's got a ridiculous title. It's so embarrassing to say as a Brit as well. You Are a Badass, by Jen Sincero, is really good. And it's written in a really, some of these books can sound a bit earnest and, you know, especially for us Brits, we can be like, but it's written in a really funny way. It's just, that changes people's mindset. I think I really like that book.
Love that. Fantastic. If our listeners would like to get in touch with you, follow you, find out a little bit more about you, how can they do that, Vicki?
Okay, if they go to my website, so vickyknights.co.uk, if they go /photographers, you can see all my training on there. So I've got an online program coming up for family photographers. I've got an online course me and Eddie have just released for branding photographers. I run a retreat once a year, and also my podcast, our podcast, Shoot, Edit, Chat, Repeat, as well. So all of those places. I've got quite a few Instagram accounts, but if they go to Vicky Knights Photography on Instagram, they can find me on there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for today. It's been such a pleasure. I know that I've taken tons, so our listeners definitely will have done as well.
I've loved chatting to you. I said, I'm leaving feeling refreshed and inspired. So thank you, Sally.
Good. No,
and I've got hair envy. I love your hair.
Thank you. Amazing. Well, hopefully we can catch up soon when the world opens up even more. We're right on track, aren't we? So hopefully we can go and grab a coffee sometimes. But thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Sally.
Thanks, Vicki. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, guys, that's everything from me today. Thank you so much again to Vicki for joining us on the show. I had a blast interviewing her, and I'm sure that you guys have learnt loads. If you'd like to see the show notes, you can head to www.studioninja.co/episode 32. Please don't forget to rate us on the podcast platform that you're listening on. A little bit of love goes a very long way. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this episode of NinjaCast, brought to you by Studio Ninja. Beautifully designed and super easy to use, Studio Ninja will help you manage your leads, clients, shoots, invoices, contracts, workflows, and so much more. To learn more or start your 30-day free trial, go to www.studioninja.co.